This is the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey, all. Welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma podcast. And today we're actually set to complete Chapter 3 in the Alcoholics Anonymous book, again titled More About Alcoholism. And before I jump in, I'll likely cover this at the end too, but I may as well start with it as well. I've been thinking about where to guide and bring the podcast after getting through Chapter 3 here, which, again, Chapter 3 in my review and take on it is really a powerful mirror for someone to hold up and reflect on their own life and their behavior and thought patterns to start asking the question of, do I have a problem with alcohol, or could possibly a loved one in my life have a problem with alcohol? And so as I thought about what comes next and what would be the most powerful topic to cover after this self-reflection, what I've decided to do is give folks a view into what your options are if you decide that you may have a problem, or if you're full-blown accepting that you're an alcoholic. I kind of want to give you like a so what next sort of view. There are many options that anyone can consider as they look towards healing and towards finding themselves on a road to recovery. I know a number of people in recovery right now who just had the ability to accept their alcoholism on their own, linked up with a sponsor and started working the steps and were right to it. They essentially went to their first AA meeting, found a sponsor, and got right down to work. That wasn't my path, and no one's path is necessarily the same, but I just kind of want to detail the options because honestly, in the world of healing and recovery, there are a confusing amount of options that exist, and you start getting into the world of Western medicine and, weird things with insurance, and anytime you do that, there's risk of scams. And so I just want to give a view of the landscape as I see it and as I've learned about it in my time here in recovery, to let the listener decide what their logical next step could be to hopefully find themselves on the road of recovery. But first, we will go back to Chapter 3. So we were working through Fred's story, and then we will conclude the chapter. So back to the book. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy. But the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. So I'm going to pause here. This is a very, very dense paragraph for me. As I read it and think about and reflect on my own journey, both just the journey and the path that I'm on in life, it's really quite impossible to delineate and separate out my journey in recovery from alcoholism from what we all experienced with Lucy in her life. And so these sentences in this paragraph, really stand out to me in a big way. And so to highlight and expand on the idea of living infinitely more satisfying and more useful than the life I lived before. The note and the thought that I had on this one is that working the steps and finding the solution, being relieved of the insanity and control that alcohol had over me has been, without a doubt, the biggest cheat code to life that I have ever experienced. I feel like it has died down a little bit, but there was a time period, and quite honestly, I think it was like 2010-ish, it felt like, where really like the life hack concept and idea took off like mad. I don't know what it is. You could probably reflect back on it and find like, I don't know, things like the 4-hour work week at the root cause or something like that. But just this obsession over how do I do as little as possible, but get the biggest bang for my buck in return. People were applying that concept in every aspect of their life. And being here now in the place that I am in my recovery journey, it's almost laughable reflecting back on my experience going through that time period and that wave of hack excitement, and just realizing that truly the biggest return on investment that I've ever done, where I have the most time, the most energy, the most creativity, the most focus on the most important things in my life, it's all because of the acts that I did to find my solution to alcoholism. Because I don't drink, I just sleep alone and rest alone has been incredible. I feel like my days are so much more useful, and I have just been able to take on so many more impactful and real projects in my life. Obviously, I have what's going on in this world of chapter 3, Stigma, but I have a lot going on even more personal sides of my life that is not entirely just recovery focus, that I've been able to do incredible things. I renovated the entire back portion of our house, largely by myself. And those parts that of the work that I did not do, I was coordinating and managing the subcontractors that we hired in. And this was right when we got home. And I'll tell you full out, this was absolutely part of my grief journey and acceptance of what had happened and occurred with Lucy. I found this project that I could do where I did have some level of control, and I dove into it. And had I been drinking in the past and still running in my life with the chaos of alcoholism, that project never would have been done. Maybe I would have smashed a few walls down. And with this project, I mean, we literally took things down to the studs and then rebuilt everything out from there. So again, that's why I very much recognize it. It totally was part of mine and our family's grief journey. We just had to sort of take this rage out and destroy things and bring them back to their most foundational and fundamental aspect, to the studs of the walls, and then pick up the pieces and clean up and start putting things back together, start placing things, fixing each of the internal systems that you don't get to see, the electrical, the HVAC, the plumbing, all of that, getting it put in place to build and create this beautiful space in our home. There is no way that would have been achieved without having the energy, without having the focus of not having any thought of alcohol in my life or any insanity associated with trying not to drink during this time in our lives. And that whole project and process was incredibly powerful and healing to us. So on top of doing all of that, where I was basically putting in 90 to 120 minutes a day, at the very least, of physical labor, that's when I was starting and launching Chapter 3 Stigma. And it kind of, even saying it, it's like, dang, Kyle, like, were you taking on too much? Were you just trying to cover up the pain? Were you just trying to mask things and distract yourself so that you didn't have to think of what you all went through with Lucy and the pain associated with losing a child and not having and being in that period of life where you were raising up an infant and watching your wife become a mother all again, and watching your son become a big brother and being caring and nurturing. And I can say that because I was conscious of it and because I just had the added mental capacity and knew that pursuing these projects were going to be healthy and healing for me, that it wasn't me masking anything up. Like, I think just recognizing it and talking about it is key in understanding and acknowledging that it's like, yes, this could be a distraction if I didn't realize it for what it could potentially be. But again, none of that, absolutely none of that would have been possible without having the incredible creative energy and the incredible amount of time and focus that I gained back. And it's ironic to me because people think about attending AA meetings as burdensome, and it's like, well, I don't have the time. Do you know how much time I wasted in my life being drunk or detoxing or having conversations with people as a result of my poor behavior and poor decisions? I wasted a significant amount of time in my 12-year struggle with alcoholism. So time is not a factor. The return that I have gotten in terms of time back to pursue the things that I'm interested in wanting to is just unbelievable. I told you this was a dense paragraph. That was one of the statements. The next one that I have highlighted, excuse me for that. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. On this one, I just want to say this. I genuinely would not trade my life for anybody's life right now. I am so content and so pleased and so humbled, honored, and grateful to be living the life that I am living, that I genuinely have no want for anybody else's life at this point. That is despite the 12 years of alcoholism. That is despite everything that we went through in bringing Lucy into this world and then losing her. Nobody could convince me to trade their life and their situation with me at this point. And then the final sentence, I would not go back to it even if I could. On this one, this is going to sound very odd to anyone that might not spend time in the recovery space or might not be on their path to recovery at this point, but I'm grateful for being an alcoholic. I don't not want to be an alcoholic. Like, I actually enjoy this trait about me because of all of the benefits that I get by not drinking. It's just, like I said previously, with the amount of time and energy and focus that I have, it's incredible what you get out of life when you don't drink. Another aspect to it that I just realized in the last week or so is people, even normal people, they tend to use the excuse of, well, I like alcohol to relax and unwind, or I like alcohol in social situations because it helps me feel comfortable and open up. And I get that, and I understand that, and I would never tell anyone who is normal not to drink. But the one thing I have thought of with these excuses and with these reasons is this. While that might be true, imagine your life and imagine a situation in which you figure out methods to relax without drinking, or you figure out how to navigate socially uncomfortable situations without drinking. I've found incredible power in those two areas specifically, where it's like I can relax. Now, whether it's being worked up about something that I'm nervous about, say like a presentation or anything to do with work, I've found manners for which I can relax in the moment. That on top of after a busy week or impactful week, like what do I do when I sit down on a Friday night after Grant has gone to bed? I have so many more things that are beneficial to me than pulling a bottle of wine or popping the cork on a bottle of wine. You can tell it's been a while since I've drank. I don't know who in their right mind uses the term or phrase pulling a bottle of wine. That's just absolutely ridiculous. But okay, anyway, sidetrack over. But yeah, I've really found incredible power. It's like, yes, I understand those situations where you want to relax or where you want to loosen up in a social situation. But I challenge you this. Spend the uncomfortable time up front putting in the work to get comfortable in those situations. And I promise you, I guarantee you, the long-term benefits of it are going to be way more impactful than you could ever realize. All right, back to the book. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems. And I'm going to pause there before going on to complete this. I mentioned this in the last podcast, but you decide. The alcoholic decides when their lives have become unmanageable. That is one thing that you control as an alcoholic. And all you have to do is accept that things have gotten out of control and that your life is unmanageable. Again, that can be as simple as a loved one bringing it up to you in terms of like, I think you might have a problem, or it could be as extreme as my situation where I had numerous injuries, consequences, legal issues, and near-death experiences before I finally decided. Back to the book. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless, apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you, if I had been able to avoid it. People like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. And I want to go back to that sentence, people like you are too heartbreaking. It is difficult when you enter into the world of recovery. You are going to see a lot of suffering. You're going to see a lot of loss. You're going to hear about and experience an intense amount of relationships that are impacted, friends who are lost, family members who won't talk to you. It is an incredibly difficult situation to put relationships through. The way I always approach it in my own experience is that just assume every single relationship I've ever had in my life is impacted in some way by my alcoholism. And I have to do my part. Now, there's lengths that you go to, but you cannot, as an alcoholic, obsess over gaining or winning one relationship back. There's a concept about living your amends in the world of recovery, and that is to just focus on living your life in recovery and doing your absolute best and taking all the action that you can to maintain yourself on the path of recovery. And then finally, the last sentence in this paragraph, for most cases, there is virtually no other solution. And that's in regards to the spiritual approach. And to those of you who are truly lost and who have hit the point where you're just searching and wondering why, I really do ask you to ponder just the question that I asked myself at a certain point going through rehab. What is the downside of me believing in a higher power? What is the downside of me pursuing a real relationship with God, of opening that door and that opportunity? To me, it felt like it was very little to risk. And again, what I have gotten back in return by opening up that channel, by opening up that door and opportunity, is difficult to explain. It's been so impactful. It is at the foundation of my ability to stay on the road of active recovery, of my ability to have gone through all the suffering that my family has gone through in the past year. And so again, just look at your situation and ask yourself, what is the downside of believing in God, of believing in a higher power? One thing that I want to stress on that, as I have explored and started to expand upon my relationship with God, is it's mine, and it's mine alone. It's incredibly personal. It's incredibly real. And my relationship, I choose not to evangelize. And just, that might seem like a contradiction, because here I am talking about it, but I am talking about my personal relationship with God and how I connect with Him, how I connect with Lucy each and every day. It's going to look different for everybody else. This might sound odd, but I find the connection, or my ability to connect with God, is greatest in two places: when I'm outdoors and when I'm in my AA space, in my AA room. I can really sit and talk to and connect and feel God, feel my higher power. And ironically, it's not in church services that I get that connection. We still go to church. We still do those types of practices. I do have a desire to start getting into some scripture and start understanding some of the history and stories that exist there, but that hasn't been my approach yet, up to this point. Yet I would, without a doubt, say I have found the solution, and I have found my relationship with God. So back to the book. One final paragraph in chapter 3. Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. Except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. So I'm going to wrap it up there for today. Like I said, the coming episodes, I do want to do a dive into what next. What if you listened to these episodes and decided, I think I have a problem, but now I don't know what to do. Maybe you've even accepted that you are an alcoholic, that you have a drinking problem. And there's just many options that exist out there. And so I want to check in and just deliver my view of the landscape of your different options for treatment, either personally or professionally, whichever you decide to pursue, whichever you decide is right for your situation and for your story. So can't say my thanks enough. I appreciate and love you all. Take care. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time, all the best.